In the underbelly of Australia's glittering Gold Coast, few names carried as much weight as Ivan Tesic. To some, he was a self-made businessman, a man who had turned street smarts into a small empire of cars, cash and clubs. To others, he was Mr. Big, the alleged mastermind behind a multi-million-dollar drug syndicate that stretched from Sydney to surfers' paradise, its roots hidden deep within the neon haze of the Glitter Strip's nightlife. In this video, we'll explore his rise, his criminal empire, and the events that ultimately brought him down. Ivan Tesic's story began far from the lights of surfers' paradise. Born in Serbia in 1973, he was just 2 years old when his parents moved to Australia, settling in Sydney's working-class suburb of Cabramatta. He attended Cabramatta High School until year 10, completed an electrical apprenticeship, and spent some time working as a labourer. Yet, like many who grew up in the tougher corners of Sydney's western suburbs, his ambitions stretched beyond a regular wage and a pair of work boots. Police records trace Ivan's criminal activity back to the early 1990s, starting with minor offences such as unlicensed driving, receiving stolen property, and falsifying identification. By his early 20s, his offences had escalated to more serious crimes, including break-ins, car theft, and possession of tools intended for unlawful entry into homes and vehicles. His first major brush with the law came in October 2002 when he was sentenced to 6 years in prison for manufacturing a commercial quantity of amphetamines. This sentence officially marked him as a significant player rather than a street-level dealer. After his release, Ivan re-emerged with greater ambition and a sharper understanding of how to operate behind layers of intermediaries. Around this time, he began to invest in the Gold Coast nightlife scene. Police would later allege that he was a silent partner in Club Live, one of Surfers' Paradise's most exclusive venues, alongside his close friend and fellow bikie figure Ricky Ciano. The nightclub became a hub for cocaine, ecstasy, and methamphetamine transactions, the kind of place where criminal wealth could be laundered behind champagne and velvet ropes. By the early 2010s, Ivan's name was circulating among law enforcement units investigating the drug flow through the Glitter Strip. Detectives considered him a significant player with close ties to multiple outlaw motorcycle clubs, including the Rebels and Bandidos. The nickname Mr. Big began to appear in intelligence reports, reflecting his growing status as a figure who directed operations from behind the scenes rather than dealing directly. He was often seen in the company of bikies, but carefully avoided public acts of violence or overt displays of power. While Ivan remained largely a name on police files, his younger brother Vlatko came under concrete scrutiny. In 2010, Vlatko was sentenced to 8 years in prison for drug trafficking and supply after a court heard he had sold hundreds of grams of methamphetamine and MDMA to an undercover officer between June and November 2008. His conviction intensified police interest in Ivan as the brothers were believed to share contacts and methods. By 2013, detectives were quietly building a new operation, one that would soon explode into one of Queensland's largest drug busts. The full scale of Ivan's operations came to light during Operation Kilo Fraction, a sprawling task force targeting alleged bikie-linked drug trafficking through Gold Coast nightclubs. Over nearly 2 years, undercover officers, surveillance teams and wiretaps meticulously tracked Ivan and his associates. By early 2014, police alleged he was the mastermind of a syndicate distributing meth oil, an intermediate product used to manufacture crystalline methamphetamine or ice across New South Wales and Queensland. Nightclubs such as Club Live served as both social fronts and hubs for distribution, providing cover for the syndicate's illicit activities while maintaining the appearance of a legitimate nightlife scene. The syndicate's operation was elaborate. Holden utes were fitted with secret chambers concealed near fuel tanks and within airbag compartments capable of hiding litres of meth oil per trip. Couriers, often young men with no prior records, were paid to drive between Sydney and the coast under strict instructions. One of his drug couriers, Darren John Dark, was reportedly attacked in 2013, having his ears cut and body burned, a message that exemplified the ruthless enforcement Ivan demanded. On April 4th, 2014, Ivan was arrested at Sydney Airport, carrying $43,000 in cash. His detention came 19 months after the beginning of Operation Kilo Fraction, by which time authorities had seized $26 million worth of drugs and millions in assets from over 150 people connected to the network. Ivan was extradited to Queensland to face multiple charges, including drug trafficking, possession, and conspiracy to import meth oil. For detectives, this arrest marked a career-defining success. For Ivan, it was the start of a legal battle that would drag on for years. Ivan's 2015 trial exposed both the scale of the police operation against him and the gaps in the evidence. At the centre of the Crown's case was Brett Young, a former postal worker turned courier who claimed he had delivered drugs and cash on Ivan's behalf. Young's testimony formed the backbone of the prosecution, portraying Ivan as the orchestrator of a sophisticated drug operation. He described first meeting Ivan through bikie circles, initially running small errands for him before eventually finding himself driving utes loaded with meth oil. He also detailed vehicles with hidden compartments and the distribution of cash payments to runners, painting a picture of a meticulously organised syndicate. Ivan's defence painted a different picture, arguing that the evidence relied on the word of a compromised informant motivated by self-preservation. Ivan denied all charges, asserting that he was simply the owner of SRB Towing, a business specialising in prestige car and motorbike transport. But police found little evidence to support this claim. Phone records revealed no towing-related calls, and months of intercepted conversations recorded no legitimate business activity. Instead, detectives suggested that Ivan used coded language to direct the movement of drugs and cash, and that SRB Towing was a convenient front for a multi-million-dollar drug enterprise. Further surveillance appeared to strengthen police suspicions. Hidden cameras installed inside Ivan's Isle of Capri home captured meetings and deliveries that authorities said were part of the drug operation. Police also revealed that Ivan had fallen out with the rebels' motorcycle gang. Allegedly, the bikies demanded that he pay a sum of money following a dispute, surrender his Harley Davidson, and even sprayed with bullets his Sydney mansion. Ivan denied all of these claims, insisting the shooting never occurred, and that the cash found in his home was merely a deposit for a classic Holden Monaro and a Rolex watch. A central question for the jury was whether Ivan knew that bottles containing meth oil were hidden in a modified ute inside a Jim Beam cooler bag. Ivan did not dispute purchasing the vehicle, which was used to transport meth oil from Sydney to the Gold Coast, but he denied knowing about the drugs or running a criminal operation. The defence argued that the key witness had fabricated elements of his testimony to protect himself and deflect attention from the real drug kingpin, Shane Ross, a Gold Coast figure later found dead in 2019 in a suspected gang execution. Without this witness, the defence maintained there was no direct evidence linking Ivan to drug trafficking. By June 2017, after weeks of evidence, the jury was unable to reach a verdict. Following nearly 3 days of deliberation, they declared themselves deadlocked, and the trial, which was supposed to bring down one of Australia's alleged drug barons, ended in stalemate. The 2017 mistrial underscored the difficulties of convicting Ivan. The case was built on circumstantial evidence, informant testimony, and extensive surveillance, but without a direct link between Ivan and the physical drug shipments, reasonable doubt persisted. Police had invested years of work, yet the jury's indecision highlighted how carefully Ivan operated, rarely putting himself in situations where he could be caught handling drugs or issuing explicit instructions. Nevertheless, the Crown prepared for a retrial, confident that further evidence would strengthen the case. When Ivan Tesic returned to court in 2019 for his retrial, the jury tasked with deciding his fate was deliberately shielded from much of his past. They were not told that police considered him to have long-standing ties to multiple outlaw motorcycle clubs, nor that he had allegedly earned millions through undeclared sources in the years leading up to his arrest. They also never heard evidence that shortly after his capture, he was recorded on a prison phone, making violent threats against the drug courier who had turned on him. The court ruled that such details would prejudice the jurors and distract them from the central issue of whether Ivan was guilty of possessing a vast quantity of methamphetamine oil. In this trial, the prosecution once again relied heavily on testimony from the same courier, now branded a supergrass witness. This time, however, the court heard that the witness had previously lied to police about aspects of the operation, including the role of other drug dealers such as Shane Ross and Sean Beach. Under cross-examination, he admitted to being a heavy drug user and to conducting his own side dealings. The defense argued that the witness's story was a fabrication designed to secure a lighter sentence for himself, pointing to the wholly suspended term he received in exchange for his cooperation. Despite these contradictions, the jury found Ivan guilty of possessing 6 litres of methamphetamine oil, a quantity that prosecutors valued at between $5 and $11 million. The trafficking charge again ended in a hung jury, but the possession verdict was enough to secure a lengthy sentence. On February 18, 2019, Ivan was sentenced to 8 years and 9 months in prison. The court concluded that the quantity of meth oil indicated a high-level role within the drug operation. He appealed, arguing the jury had been misled and that the prosecution's key witness had lied under oath. However, the appeal failed. Ivan served roughly half of his sentence before being released on parole in May 2022. Upon his release, he sought to rebuild his life in Sydney with his partner Katie Whiten and their 4 children. Their youngest daughter, Storm, born in 2020, had been diagnosed with Sandhoff disease, a rare genetic disorder that attacks the nervous system. Ivan's post-prison life appeared quieter. Friends described a man whose priorities had shifted, consumed by the effort to support his partner and daughter through the illness. In September 2023, however, only a month after he was freed from parole conditions, Storm died at age 3. Following Storm's death, Ivan retreated further from public view. Those close to him noted that he seemed determined to stay out of the criminal world that had once dominated his life, but they also acknowledged the uncertainty surrounding his future, since the habits, connections and pressures of his past are never far away. The trajectory of Ivan's conviction and eventual release highlights both the resilience of Australia's drug economy and the limits of law enforcement efforts. Despite large-scale operations and the imprisonment of high-profile figures, methamphetamine remains deeply entrenched in Queensland and New South Wales. Following Ivan's sentencing, former Crime and Corruption Commission Chairman Alan McSporran cautioned that simply jailing dealers and traffickers would not solve the problem. He argued that each arrest only created space for another player in the same network, and that authorities needed a broader strategy focused on reducing demand through prevention and rehabilitation. Ivan's case serves as a stark reminder that the fight against methamphetamine cannot be won through arrests alone, but requires a sustained effort to address addiction, corruption, and the social conditions that allow figures like Ivan Tesic to thrive. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. If you want more stories from the Australian underworld, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It really helps me out and helps the channel grow. Till next time, take care.